Hi guys, Numis here. Welcome back to episode 2 of Northam City, a Cities Skylines series where I build a city inspired by Northeastern USA. For this episode, I'll be building the main cargo part for the city, which will be called Port of Astoria, after the borough it is located in. An inspiration for this build, I've looked a little at cargo ports over in New York, New Jersey. This is a rather large port area, so it will definitely not be an attempt at recreation, and the scale will be quite a bit smaller. It's a great inspiration just in terms of layout and some details here and there, but I will definitely add my own touch to it as well, just to make it a little bit more unique. To start off, I'm just laying out some dock networks and lining it with some plain concrete roads, which will be what I use for the whole port. In order to get the look I want for this, I am using some plain DIY jocks and sinking them just enough to be covered by the surfaces on the dock networks. This gives me the function of a cargo harbor and allows me to do the detailing completely from scratch and fully custom. I'm using the prop version of the Maersk ship I got from the workshops just to figure out the distance between the different docking points that makes sense. Even though there is the appearance of 4 docking points, I only have 3 of them functional. For the last one I will keep just the ship prop, something that I will work on later, where I create a scene for a docked up cargo ship. I'll also add some large barge ports at the end of the port area, which will eventually be part of a local network of barges, sending cargo around the city through the waterways. Back to what we're seeing on screen. I also wanted to add some freight rail connections within the port itself to make it more interconnected. I'm using a plain cargo station from the workshop and swapping out the tracks for the American ones from Railway 2. Because the freight trains I use are very long, I need to make sure there are additional tracks in a completely straight alignment to make room for the whole train. The freight train I use is, I think, about 28 cars and 540 meters long roughly, and with the help of a few mods I managed to measure this out. Getting off the dock area, I try to make the slope as gentle as I can, but the space is pretty limited here. Even if I would have preferred a more gentle slope, it's not all too bad and should be within what a train can possibly handle. I'll detail the freight rail area later. For now I just want to make sure I have it connected to an outside connection, at least for one of the double tracks. The other one I just leave across the river until I figure out where to take the tracks at a later point, probably in a different episode. The port will mainly be filled with these container stacks that functions as warehouses, and lined along them I put some crane rail decals, which will hold some stacking cranes, I believe they are called.
Always had a way to make it work and find another route. Always had a way to make it work and find another route. Always had a way to make it work and find another route. Always had a way to make it work and find another route.
Heading back to the freight rail terminal, I add some extra details, using a lot of ploppable pavement to get that look of rails staying right on top of the concrete, which is how it would realistically look here. And then I add some cranes along crane rails, which would be used for loading of the cargo from the train and disperse it around the port. I'm also just gonna add some simple animations to the cranes using a module in PO. Towards this end, I just add some storage for different metals and coal. I've seen this sort of thing on industrial waterfront areas around New York, so it was just this little extra detail I wanted to add in a spot I wasn't sure what to do with. With the plain concrete roads, it leaves me a blank slate to do the marking exactly like I want. I'm just going by what I've seen in different pictures and videos of real cargo ports, and adding all the markings to the road with IMT. For the entrance, I just do some simple detailing, adding an industrial gate and a security booth. This road here will mark the border of the port area, and I need to have something to close it off for security. Using IMT again, I add a fence, but also some overgrowth and damaged road decals, which I think really helps the surfaces blend together much better, and add some much needed roughness here. The roads were looking a bit too bland with only the markings, so I went into IMT again and added some road wear decals and copied it onto all the roads. For truck parking, I noticed on references that a lot of the time they would have these yellow diagonal markings. To achieve this, I've used some old school decal lines and putting them together, adjusting the shape and length using PO, and just copying it over and over. Then it's just a matter of filling it up with different prop trucks. So put down these straddle carriers in a pretty messy way earlier. Straddle carriers are the vehicles that pick up and carry containers at the docking points, where it's being offloaded by the big cranes. After getting them in a more orderly manner, I create some parking markers, which I will copy in a lot of different spots around the port, along with the parked straddle carriers. One of the most important details is of course the ship-to-shore cranes. The big cranes that load cargo off the ships and onto the harbor. I took this prop from the workshop and converted them into PO because I wanted to customize them further by writing Port of Astoria across the sides. And having them as a procedural object also allows me to add a little animation to some of them. The area directly below the ship-to-shore crane is where the containers will be picked up, and from pictures I can see they have these different lanes marked by yellow lines most of the time. And I'll also add the crane rails for the ship-to-shore cranes with IMT while I'm working on this. I'll go back and forth a lot on the design of the markings here. So this is just the first draft of how it will end up looking. The surface on the dock networks felt a little too bright, and markings weren't as visible as I wanted, so I changed it for a slightly darker one. I'll also do some changes to the markings, but this won't stay because in a second I change it once again. Lining up the straddle carriers below the cranes, I noticed that the width of the lanes was just very off, so I had to redo the markings, but I think this is the final version of it, if I remember correctly. During this whole build, I got a lot of help from another Cities Skylines YouTuber, Shukaboa, who you should definitely check out. He's a real life sailor. He mentioned that the lower bar of the cranes was too low for straddle carriers to fit under, and he was absolutely right, so I fixed that in PO.
This is the end of side 1 of this record. Please now, turn it over for the second side. The second side.
Talking to Shukaboa, I got a lot of details about how a docked up ship would look like. And with his help, I decided to try and get as close as possible to the real thing. So this is where I went into a real detailing rabbit hole. The first thing to get right was adding more winches, which I did by making a second copy of the ship prop and extracting it from that. I had this great illustration from Shukaboa of the layout, which helped me a lot. After getting the winches placed correctly, I used some procedural wire props that I added a metal wire texture to in PO, and then there was a lot of wiggling around to get it scaled and positioned correctly. next thing you tackle is what's called an anchor windlass. There wasn't any prop like this in the workshop, so I kinda had to assemble this with a lot of different props and lots of PO. I don't think it's perfect, but in the end it works for its purpose, as long as you look at it from a medium distance and not all too close. I'm doing here is just adding the hole where the anchor would come out, and this allows me to know how to position the anchor windlasses better into its final position. Using a few props that are PO and change texture, I'm making what are the brakes for the winches and windlasses. With PO it allows me to rotate them around so they are positioned correctly. final part of this micro detailing project within this build will be to make the gangways. The gangways are some kind of big collapsible stairs, as far as I understand, which will be put out at the side of the ship when it's docked up, in order for people working on the ship to get on and off the ship. There's also this safety net put around it in many ports, which I managed to get in by using some fishnet props. Originally I had a log yard and some vanilla warehouses in this spot, but I removed it because it didn't really fit the look of the rest of the port. What I'm adding in this place is a huge DHL distribution center. I don't know if there are ports with this in real life, but I felt it was a good fit and allowed me to get some more variety in the area. I wanted it to be this really big structure, so I merged a lot of different DHL warehouses together, with a smaller DHL building across it, which actually functions as post distribution in the game, while the others function as normal warehouses, I believe. I'm also adding some other custom warehouses, which I add some signs and graffiti to, closer to the end of this video. Some of the final details I'm adding to the build are numbering for the container rows. I wasn't completely sure how this worked in real life, but I guess there are different practices on different ports, so I just did what makes sense to me. All the different blocks would have a ladder assigned from A going up, while each container row within the block we get a number from 1 and onwards. When you look at the whole part above this, is a really noticeable and important detail, which I think adds a lot to the realism of the build. So that is it for today's build. I hope you enjoyed it if you made it to the end of this video. A like, comment and subscribe would greatly be appreciated and will help me grow the channel. I do have a Patreon page as well if you wish to support me further, but just watching the videos and liking and commenting, all of that is all I can ask for. So until next time, stay tuned for some short cinematics.